Okay, hi everyone, and thanks for joining the webinar. And if you're watching on YouTube, then please do consider attending a live event, and you'll get the links and everything, because particularly in these times, there's no substitute for a live event rather than something that's recorded in a studio and subjected to multiple edits. And I, like many other people, am missing the opportunity to interact with live audiences. I don't see that changing anytime soon. So this is the best we have. And I enjoy doing them, and we've had some really interesting discussions and subjects. So what do we have on the menu today? Well, it is bioresonance therapy. Why do we have it on the menu today? Because when I look at my Google Analytics, and I don't understand most of what I see there, what I can see is that the most hits I get on my website and on some of my videos is for bioresonance therapy, even though it's a very small part of my business, albeit one that I am very interested in. And the second reason is, which I think probably falls into the bucket of synchronicity, is that during the last week, I've had several notes from people who are asking various questions about bioresonance therapy, what it's good for, what it's not good for, do I recommend it or not? So this is sort of perhaps an opportunity that maybe I should have done before to provide people with a bit of preliminary information. And remember, this is only a taster, although I will point you to places where you can go to find out more. Now, my experience, as you know, background as a very, well, relatively conventional medical doctor. If working in Africa during the war zones and things like that is conventional, but certainly practicing conventional medicine as I was taught at medical school by and large. Although, of course, I was exposed to, I had competition in some of these places, and many people would rather go to the witch doctor than to me. And I didn't worry too much about that, but I suppose it made me a little interested in what the witch doctors were doing, and the equivalents in the Middle East, whose name escapes me, the Wazim doctors, because they worked with fire and they brand their patients. And indeed, sometimes some parts of Africa, they do similar stuff as well. Anyway, so I've always been open to other forms of treating people. And when I returned from Africa to a more conventional job, as a patient, I became a victim of acupuncture. Acupuncture was very new and very controversial back in those days. And I had it for a back problem that I had for a few years. It wasn't getting any better, getting worse, if anything. And I was persuaded, actually against my will, to go and see this person. And I did. And the result I got was absolutely zero, apart from my wallet was slightly emptied. It wasn't too much emptied. So I'd had an experience and I just wrote it off until the next morning, that is, when instead of having to get out of bed like a limpet, I was able to actually pretty much jump out of bed, which was a new experience, and I had no back pain. And whilst it's come and gone in the years since, it's never been as bad as it was then. So, having an inquisitive and a curious mind, I wanted to find out about acupuncture. And to cut a long story short, I was soon trained and was one of the first doctors in the UK to practice acupuncture. And then very quickly I became a trainer as well for the official body that represented medical doctors using acupuncture. Mind you, as I said, there weren't many of us. Nowadays, of course, acupuncture is considered a very mainline therapy and available from most doctors' practices and from hospitals, particularly good for pain relief. Now, what does this have to do with bioresonance therapy? Well, the thing that it has to do with bioresonance therapy is that I use the traditional methods of inserting needles into various parts of the body in the traditionally recommended places. But as my experience grew, I started experimenting and pretty much came to the conclusion that there were only a few acupuncture points that one needed for just about any condition that came through the door, which made life simple. And then I discovered that if I hooked up the acupuncture needles to an electrical stimulator, I got even better results. And of course, that's probably the forerunner of what physiotherapists do now with their TENS treatments, and I'll come on to that in a minute. So that got me thinking for the first time that there's something about the energy of the body that can be used therapeutically, and that when one puts more energy into the body, in this case it was electrical energy going through these needles, the beneficial effect is amplified. Now, once one starts down this road, there's typically no going back. And so that interest led me to a treatment protocol, which was called Vega Therapy. And then you're using little electrodes to measure electrical currents across various acupuncture points, and you can do all kinds of clever things with it. Now, and I had some pretty good results, I have to say, but in the back of my mind, in fact, probably in the front of my mind, I didn't really know what was going on. And I didn't know why some people were getting benefit and some weren't. And I wasn't too convinced about the accuracy of these electrical measurements. So I decided to drop it. I mean, I was doing well enough with my acupuncture, and this was only a sort of a part-time hobby anyway. And I forgot about this kind of therapy for many years, until I was posted to Kazakhstan in 1996. And that was soon after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and it was when the former Soviet Union started breaking up and Kazakhstan became an independent state. And it was a very interesting experience being parachuted in as one of the few Westerners to work there. And my job as a doctor was to set up and run the medical facilities in Kazakhstan's largest oil field, which is a huge mega field, and still is, by the way. It's still there producing massive amounts of oil. But of course, these days, we don't use anything like as much oil as we used to. But then it was very important to the economy of the country. And the first day that I arrived, I was shown around the medical facilities that they had, which the Russians had built and operated. And I can't say that I was overly impressed. I would say, first of all, everything was scrupulously clean, and that's not a bad place to start. But when I went around, what equipment they had was pretty antiquated. And the pharmacy, I mean, I asked, I've not seen the pharmacy, and they said, oh, you did see it, but you didn't notice. And it really was a little hutch in the wall, and they had a few shelves, and I went back to see what was on the shelves. And there were very few conventional drugs that I recognized, but lots of herbal drugs, which were obviously very popular. And many of them had valerian in, which of course you've probably heard of now. That seemed to be used for many different conditions. And the other thing that I noticed, perhaps the largest area of this hospital was devoted to what they called their energy department. And it looked like a very advanced physiotherapy department. And as the name suggests, lots of electrical gadgets that I'd never seen before. And piqued my interest, of course, and I spoke to the technicians, and they generously shared their knowledge with me, and they told me how they use these kit and the kind of conditions they treated and the results that they had. And they did have good results. So I came away from that recognizing that Russian medicine is very different from European medicine, Western medicine, but don't knock something just because you're not familiar with it, because I did see as the months unfolded that they did get good results. So if I had a job there, it was to try and blend the best of Western medicine with the stuff that was already there, that everybody knew about and the patients and the staff trusted. So life moves on. I went to different jobs with, again, my interest in electrical treatment, again, waned until in my second career, which started about 13 years ago, doing what I'm doing now, being an elite performance coach. working with alternative or complementary therapies. And I had the opportunity to revisit what's called loosely energy medicine. And the question that I get asked by people is, what kind of equipment do you use? And so I'm going to tell you, I've used all kinds of equipment over the years and spent quite a lot of money on it. So I'm going to tell you the things that I think are the simplest to use, and also, probably because of that, the least expensive, because I can assure you, you can get a pretty basic bioresonance piece of kit for upwards of $30,000 or $40,000. And I've been on courses and been trained on these machines, and I'm not convinced that they're any better than the two bits of kit I'm going to explain to you now. And of course, energy is energy. We've been largely talking about electrical energy in these few minutes, but don't forget, we have other forms of energy apart from electricity. And the commonest one of that is sound energy. And people have known throughout the ages to the present day, and presumably tomorrow as well, that particularly music has the power to move people's emotions. And when people's emotions move, generally healing follows. Pretty much like the Chinese would say, when you put energy into the body, it removes blockage, and once blockage is removed, healing will follow. And so the first bit of kit I'm going to recommend to you to experiment with, which will cost you only a few dollars, is an app that I have, and it's for my Mac computer, so I'm assuming there'll be a similar app for non-Macs, and it's called Audio Test. And one can just dial in any frequency and you'll get a noise. And you can put them together, add files together, and it's pretty simple to use. Lots of the buttons and switches on this thing you don't even need to do. The only thing you need to do is put in the right numbers. So what are the right numbers? Well, in bioresonance therapy, which started with a guy called Royal Rife, I think at the end of the 1800s, the late 1800s, he came to the conclusion that many illnesses, particularly cancers, were caused by viruses. And he experimented with this electrical equipment and found there were certain frequencies that killed these viruses, and he listed them all. And you've only got to look on the internet and you'll find a huge list of rife frequencies. So if you, and the medical problems that people use them for. So you can dial in those frequencies and just listen to them. And I can't imagine they can do you any harm. They may not do you any good, but it's an experiment. I'm going to come back to that at the end when I make a further recommendation. So let's leave sound for the moment. Other than knowing that music therapy is, as the name says, a therapy in its own right, practiced by many people with great results, they say. The second piece of kit that I bought is called, certainly in this country, it's called Pain Genie. Genie is spelled G-E-N-I-E. And it's called Pain Genie because it is good for pain. I can definitely, I have personal experience of that. When I have a back pain or a neck pain or pulled a muscle or anything, that's my go-to first line of treatment. And a point here, it's going to cost you several $100. I think in the UK, it's probably about £300 or £400. And I was hoping to show you one in my hand, but I was searching in my other office. This is my COVID office, and I couldn't find it. So I've mislaid it somewhere. I think it's either hiding somewhere or it's in Australia where I last used it. But what I would say, if you do get this bit of kit or are interested in it, do get these cables, which will plug into it. And they have these pads, which is exactly the same pads that a physiotherapist would use. for their tens, and obviously it's connected to an electric wire. There's two of them, a red and a black, for obvious reasons. And you just stick this on various parts of the body. I choose to stick it here because this is about the largest acupuncture point, but it doesn't really matter. You're not recommended to put them on one side of the body, two different sides of the body, because then the energy will go across the midline, and there is the theoretical possibility of causing a cardiac arrhythmia, so don't take the chance. Don't take the chance if you're pregnant either. Don't take the chance if you suffer from epilepsy, and there are a few other contraindications as well. Point being here, if you do this, get some training, and fortunately the websites have plenty of places for you to start, and you never put them above this area here either, because you won't fry your brain, but it's just a precaution. It's just what's recommended. So that's called the Pain Genie, and it's called the Pain Genie because people have to be careful of the claims they make when they're marketing a product, and there is some pretty good evidence that it helps with pain, and I know that from personal experience. And this comes from Russia, or the technology comes from Russia, and it was developed for their space programs. They wanted a handheld device that would be good for all kinds of different conditions that the astronauts could take with them. And if you want to get a bit more sophisticated than that, then the equipment that I used is called Spooky 2. And I haven't lost this bit of kit yet, so I can show you at least what the generator box looks like. Obviously, it has to be plugged in, and you can press these various buttons, and you can preload programs of frequencies that will run through the machine. And again, you connect those pads that I showed you. The other clever thing about it, and I haven't really made a decision about whether this works or not, is on the back, they've got these little things which are containers. And in here, you can put nail clippings or anything that contains your DNA. And when the program is running, it doesn't matter whether you're the other side of the world, because of resonance, bioresonance, well, this is all part of quantum theory, your body will still react to it, whatever it might be. So am I convinced that this works? I'm not. I believe that it does. That's why I still use it if I'm asked to, or on myself, or with friends. But I don't have any compelling evidence that it works. Perhaps the best example I can think of is there was a gentleman who'd got quite bad Parkinson's disease, and he asked whether I thought it could help. I said, I don't know, happy to try if you want. And after one treatment, there was no question that his tremor and his other symptoms were very much better. But this was temporary, which is a little disappointing. But I mean, generally speaking, if one produces any kind of a result, if it's temporary, presumably there must be a way, perhaps with repeated treatments or whatever, to cement the change. So, that's a possibility, but I just don't have enough experience to answer those kind of questions. The other thing that I would say, which is really, really important, and I'm glad I didn't forget it, is that if you decide to have treatment, or somebody you know decides to have this treatment, do not ignore medical treatment. Often when people have cancer, they will think, okay, I don't want to take chemotherapy, radiotherapy, surgery, all those other things. And yes, they do all have side effects, but they're still the best game in town, the best show in town. And modern medicine does move very, very rapidly in this area, and the treatments are have a lot less side effects than when I was practicing conventional medicine. So that is an important health and safety information, because if you put all your faith in bioresonance therapy and it doesn't help you, then you've denied yourself the opportunity. So definitely, I strongly recommend you do not go that way with putting all of your eggs in one basket. So that was the health and safety warning. And now, what I'm going to talk a little bit more about is this sound therapy, because this is something that I use every day when I remember. And there is some music or some notes that are called the Solfeggio Frequencies. I've written blogs and stuff about this, so if you go to my website, you'll find them. But the Solfeggio Frequencies, they are 6 notes, and they were sort of decrypted and made popular by a classical musician who, he's called a musicologist, so he's an academic musician who examines the structure of music. And he felt that medieval music had been neglected. And he studied the Gregorian chants and other religious music, and he found these 6 notes being used all the time, and they're called the songs of the spine, or are they supposed to relate to the chakras? Now, it's interesting that the 6 notes, because 6 is a number that doesn't often appear in the universe. So I just wonder whether there might be 7 notes and one's got missing somewhere. I mean, we have 7 chakras, so that would, if the 2 are connected, we would expect that. So I listen to those, and I find them calming when I'm working on my computer in the background. Do they do me any good? Haven't had any idea. I can say they definitely don't do me any harm. Now, if you go to my website, and if you look on the search button, you'll find a blog or 2 that I've done on the Solfeggio Frequencies, spelled S-O-L-F-E-G-G-I-O. And I've actually put together a short little audio segment, which you can play. And you can loop it, and then you can play it forever in the background if you want. So you can use that off my website or download it off my website. And you look on YouTube, you will find many of these frequencies that you can listen to. YouTube is full of them, and they're probably more glossily produced than mine, but the numbers will still be the same, and they'll tell you what these numbers are. Why don't I use bioresonance therapy more? Well, that is because I don't feel that I need to. I sometimes, well, my mantra is always make it simple, stupid. So I always try and break things down to the common denominator. And energy is energy, and there are other ways to connect other energies to use. And I feel that one doesn't need to carry stuff around with us in a bag. We don't need an electrical current to plug things into. We've got our hands, we've got our eyes, we've got our mind, we've got our breathing techniques, all the various different techniques that I've described in the past. That's what I use, and I don't feel minded or in any way compelled to try anything else better right now. I'd rather just get better and better at what I do. And we may well talk about this in another program. You know, I value your feedback on that, and I'll perhaps talk more about the kind of methods that I use. So I hope that's, the other thing, you know, as I said, there's lots of research stuff and instructional stuff on the internet. So if you go to Pain Genie, you'll find courses you can go on. There's online training. If you go to the Spooky 2 website, you'll find that easily enough. If you Google it, you'll find lots of stuff on that website about the equipment and testimonials and what people have used it for. So loads of information. The only difficult thing is to decide whether you want to do it, how much you're prepared to spend on it, and does it do any good? So I've left some questions unanswered, but at least I've given you some places to search. I've given you my personal experience and the most important health and safety warning, because that's what gets a bad reputation and causes people to die when they ignore the good things that modern medicine still has. So I've gone on a bit longer than I normally would, because it's a bit of a complex subject, this one. I hope it's been helpful. The show really is about the people who are on it for their questions and comments. So now I'm going to take a breather, and I welcome your input and experience, if you have any.
Angela.
Hi.
I was just going to say, I had experience of bioresonance a number of years ago, because one of my friends had bought a machine and was looking for guinea pigs, so I was one of those guinea pigs. Unfortunately, from my recollection now, I can't actually remember a lot about it, but I remember holding on to two sort of metal things, and yeah, I remember a rather large piece of equipment, but I can't actually remember what we were working on or what the outcome was. But he didn't actually persist with it, and I think he eventually was not convinced. That's all I can remember about it. But no, I did experience it, and I was curious to know more. So I'll certainly have a look at some other websites just out of interest, really. But, yeah.
Yeah, well, thanks, Angela, and that's what I do. I keep, I keep abreast of what's going on, and to make sure I'm not missing something. And another interesting thing on these courses that I went to, some of the people, in fact, I'd say easily more than half of the people, they'd bought the kit sometimes months earlier, and some had never even got it out of the box. And those that had actually never used it, which I suppose we're all different. I mean, if any kind of box comes into my office, first thing I do is open it and see what's inside. And then if it's got knobs on, I turn the knobs on and see what happens. I suppose I should be a bit more security aware than that. But that tells me something. It tells me that there are people who get put off by the technology. And the Spooky 2, the bit of kit that I showed you, it's driven by software programs and stuff, and actually setting the kit up, you do have to get your head around it. I'm not saying it's difficult, but it's clunky. And once you've got the practice, it becomes a lot easier. But I know that puts some people off, and that's why, given a vote between the two, I like my Pain Genie, and I'm still a bit annoyed with myself that I've lost it somewhere. But it will come back, I'm sure.
I can see it. I have one then. I have a quick story to share and a question. And it's not my personal story. It's a story of a very good friend of mine who was addicted to cocaine, and he really wanted to ditch that addiction, and he couldn't, and he struggled, and he was taking that every day. And the last solution in his head was bioresonance, and he found this practice in London, and he went there. He got connected to a laptop with some cables. This is as far as I know. Before that treatment, he had to give him something with his DNA. Either it was a saliva, a nail clip, or a hair. I think it was a hair, actually. And after one or maybe a couple of treatments, he was healed. I don't know how permanent that was. I'm sure that at least for a year, he was not touching it. Even once he tried to touch it just to test it, as he said it, and he didn't like it. He couldn't take that. So it was working for a long while. I don't know where he is with that now, but it seemed like it worked for him, and he was very excited about it. And to the point that he was trying, maybe still is, to open his own practice, because he was so certain about it, that it works, that he wanted to share that with people.
Well, that's a pretty good story. And we all know about addictions, and drug addictions in particular can be extraordinarily addictive. And the sad thing is that it takes somebody's life away. I mean, they don't usually die, although they can do, but the quality of life that they have is pretty awful. And I've seen a lot of drug addicts, and I haven't yet met one that is happy to continue taking their drugs. They want to get off, but they find it extraordinarily difficult. And the facilities in this country are pretty stretched and abysmal to help them do that. I mean, our prisons are full of people who are drug addicts. Their problems are not necessarily that of criminal behavior. It's because their brain is messed up and they become desperate for their drugs, that they do things that are pretty bad and stupid. So, I mean, if we sank more money into treating addictions, we wouldn't need such big prisons. Pretty sure of that. And the other thing is, Greg, that, if your friend was clean for a year, if anybody can be clean for a month, they can be clean for the rest of their life. That shows that they've found a way to to beat their addiction. What comes after that, they've gone through the withdrawal, if there was any, and maybe there wasn't any. But after that, it's behavioural change, really, and probably changing the people you mix with. I imagine that's pretty important. It all comes down to how much you want to do it. The other person that gets a lot of publicity on bioresonance therapy is Noel Edmonds. There's some videos on YouTube because Noel Edmonds is a great supporter of it. He had cancer, and I think it was prostate cancer, I'm not certain, but he's adamant that it cured him. And he's been on TV and being interviewed, and he got very tetchy when he was questioned about it. So he's a supporter. So there are plenty of anecdotal cases where people have had benefit, but as one of my first bosses in medicine said, one case is anecdotal, but when you get two, you've got a series that you can write about in a journal. Now, of course, he was joking, but doctors are very suspicious of anecdotal one-off cases, really, probably because we can't explain them.
Yeah, I actually have one, and it was touching the acupuncture. It was more about tapping. And tapping is a part of EFT, which is emotional freedom technique. Yeah. They use it. I've read some books, and the results were pretty staggering from what they were writing in the books, at least. And they were talking about the research which was done about tapping. And as far as I know, you do the tapping on that energy centers, acupuncture talks about. What are your thoughts about it?
Well, it's very popular. There's plenty of therapists doing it, and they say they're getting good results. And there's plenty of clients who go to them and also think they're getting pretty good results. I've not tried it myself. I obviously know about the technique. My friend Paul McKenna was very keen on tapping, and he used to do a lot of it in almost all of his interventions. And to the best of my knowledge, he doesn't do it anymore, or rarely, and he would say, because I found other ways that are at least as good. But at the end of the day, for all of us, we choose what suits us, and just because I don't do tapping or EFT, it should not be seen in any way as a criticism of it. It's just that it doesn't resonate with me, literally, and I don't have the skills to do it anyway.
I've got one more, if I may. I'm going to steal the show.
We have time. Yeah, you can have
the question, sure. The frequency 432 hertz. Have you heard about it?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm not good on remembering numbers, but I'm pretty sure that's one of the Solfeggio frequencies.
One of those divine frequencies.
Yeah. So tell us more about it, Greg.
No, I don't know much. I was just watching some videos about it some time ago, so I don't remember much about it, as far as that it also had some amazing results, that it could literally heal people, I think, from tumors and other diseases. I think it was used even by my brother, who's a music producer. As I told him, I said, listen, if you produce a music, then use this frequency, because it's healing, and I believe it can be used to produce any kind of music. And he said he tried. It was not good enough. It kind of was, when you use this frequency to create a track, it was just too, the volume or the sound was too low, so it wouldn't work. He creates electronic music, so it's where you need a loud music, really. So he said, from his opinion, it cannot be really used to produce music. But yeah, but plenty of videos on YouTube about this frequency. And apparently, it's a very magical, divine frequency.
Yeah, yes. If I'm correct that it is a solfeggio, then yeah, there are plenty. There will be plenty, and it is in the audible range for most people. All of these 6 solfeggios you can hear. I know that because I've heard them myself. But all of our hearing's a bit different, and it might not suit for a musical production where you want something very bass in the background or something. So I'm sure your brother's quite right, but doesn't mean to say that you can't listen to it.
Yeah.
Okay, any other last comments or questions? Okay, well, there we are. I've responded to the requests for people so the people are interested in this. I'm sure that a lot of people will be watching on YouTube, and I've done my best to give you my experiences. I've pointed you in some directions to go. And apart from the big health and safety thing, I would say if you are going to put your toes in the water, don't spend a lot of money until you've convinced yourself there's something in it. And also, you don't need to. Sometimes expensive is not best, unless it's a bottle of champagne. Okay, so I leave you all there, everybody. Have a great week. We will be back next week, assuming that nothing gets in the way, and we'll try and dodge the kind of things that might get in the way. So I wish you to have a magical week. I hope that the frequencies resonate with you, and most of all, I hope that you're happy. So thanks for attending. Stay well.